My hands were still shaking from the rush when I paid the taxi driver, $23 for a ride from the airport back to my own house, because I'd forgotten my passport like some kind of idiot. I could already hear Natalie's voice in my head, telling me to slow down and breathe. But I didn't have time to slow down. My flight was leaving in less than an hour, and I still needed to get back to the airport. I dug through my purse for my keys, my fingers fumbling past my wallet, my phone, a pack of gum I didn't remember buying. Finally, I felt the cool metal and pulled them out. That's when I noticed Brandon's car in the driveway. I stopped walking. His car wasn't supposed to be here. He'd told me this morning at breakfast that he had back-to-back meetings all day, important ones, something about a new client downtown. So why was his car sitting in our driveway at 10:30 on a Wednesday morning? A strange feeling settled in my stomach, the kind of feeling you get right before something bad happens, the kind you try to ignore because you don't want to seem crazy or paranoid. I unlocked the front door as quietly as possible. I don't know why I was being quiet in my own house, but something told me to listen first and announce myself later. The living room was empty. So was the kitchen. Everything looked normal. The coffee mug Brandon had used that morning was still sitting by the sink. His jacket was draped over the back of a chair. Then I heard it. A voice coming from upstairs. His voice. My heart started beating faster. Not the excited kind of fast. The scared kind. I set my luggage down by the door without making a sound. Each step toward the stairs felt heavy, like my feet didn't want to take me where my brain was telling them to go. The voice got clearer as I climbed. He was in his office. The door was half open, and he was talking to someone. I stopped 3 steps from the top and held my breath. I know, Brandon was saying. His voice sounded different, urgent, almost secretive. But we have to stick to the timeline. Once she's in Seattle, everything will be easier. The floor seemed to tilt under my feet. I grabbed the railing. She. He was talking about me. There was a pause while he listened to whoever was on the other end of the phone. My mind was racing so fast I could barely hear over my own thoughts. Who was he talking to? What timeline? What would be easier once I was gone? Then his voice again. The house is the biggest issue. We need to move fast before she starts asking questions. The house. Our house. The house we bought together 6 years ago. The house where we had our first Christmas as a married couple. The house where I cried every month when another pregnancy test came back negative. My vision went blurry. I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself. Brandon kept talking. I've already contacted the agent. We can have everything ready by next month. She's so focused on the new job, she won't notice until it's done. My whole body started shaking. Not just my hands now. Everything. He was selling our house, behind my back, and he thought I was too stupid or too distracted to notice. No, she doesn't suspect anything, he said, and I could hear something in his voice. Relief? Satisfaction? Last night she asked about that dinner receipt, but I handled it. The restaurant receipt, the one I'd found in his jacket pocket last week, the expensive French place downtown where I knew we hadn't eaten together. He'd told me it was a business lunch with a client. He'd looked me right in the eye and lied. And I'd believed him. Look, Gregory, Brandon said, and my chest tightened even more because now I knew he was talking to his brother. I love my wife, but this has to happen. We can't keep living like this. The words hit me like cold water. He loved me, but he couldn't keep living like this? Living like what? Being married to me? Once she's settled in Seattle and I'm out there too, we can finally move forward. This long-distance thing, all these secrets, I'm tired of it. I want to be free of all this. Free. He wanted to be free. Free of me. Free of us. Free of our marriage. Tears started running down my face before I could stop them. 8 years. We'd been married for 8 years, and the whole time I'd been planning our future in Seattle, excited about starting this new chapter together, he'd been planning his escape. 2 weeks before I heard my husband planning to be free of me, I was sitting in my boss's office getting the best news of my career. "Regional Director," Patricia said, sliding a folder across her desk toward me. "Seattle office. 30% salary increase, full relocation package. Congratulations, Claire." I stared at the folder like it might disappear if I blinked. Regional Director. I'd been working toward this for 5 years, staying late, taking on extra projects, proving myself over and over again in a company that didn't always take women seriously. "I don't know what to say," I whispered. Patricia smiled. "Say yes. You've earned this. The Seattle team specifically requested you. They need someone who can turn that office around, and you're the only person I trust to do it." My hands trembled as I opened the folder. The offer letter was real. The numbers were real. This was actually happening. "Can I have a day to talk to my husband?" I asked. "Of course, but Claire," Patricia leaned forward, "don't let anyone talk you out of this. This opportunity won't come around twice." I drove home with my heart pounding. Brandon and I had always said we'd support each other's careers. We'd promised that when big opportunities came, we'd figure it out together. But Seattle was far. It meant uprooting our whole life. What if he didn't want to go? When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed candles glowing through the dining room window. I walked inside and stopped. The table was set with our wedding china, the good wine glasses, a bouquet of fresh flowers in the center. Brandon came out of the kitchen wearing the apron I'd bought him as a joke that said, "Kiss the cook." "Surprise," he said, grinning. "How did you—" "Patricia called me this afternoon. She wanted to make sure the promotion wouldn't cause problems." He crossed the room and pulled me into a hug. "I told her my wife is brilliant and deserves everything she's worked for." I felt tears coming and tried to blink them away. "It's in Seattle." "I know. We'd have to move. Leave everything. You'd have to find a new job." Brandon pulled back and looked at me. Really looked at me. "Claire, this is your dream. We're going to Seattle." Over dinner, we talked about everything. Brandon had already looked up architecture firms in Seattle. He'd researched neighborhoods. He'd even found a coffee shop near the office that he said would become my new favorite place. "What about starting a family?" I asked quietly. We'd been trying for 3 years. 3 years of doctors and tests and disappointment. Brandon reached across the table and took my hand. "We can start a family anywhere. Maybe a change will be good for us. Fresh start, new city, new energy." I wanted to believe him. And that night, I did. We stayed up late talking about mountains and rain and finally having enough space for a real office and maybe a nursery. Everything felt possible. Everything felt right. It was past midnight when I finally started getting ready for bed. Brandon was in the bathroom with the door almost closed. I could hear his voice, low and quiet. He was talking to someone on the phone. I pulled on my pajamas and tried not to listen. But our bedroom was small and the bathroom door wasn't completely shut. "I know," Brandon was saying, "but we have to be careful about timing." I froze. "Not yet," he continued. "I'll tell you more when I know for sure." The water turned on, drowning out whatever he said next. A minute later, he came out with his phone in his hand and plugged it into the charger. "Who was that?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Just Gregory, some family stuff." Brandon climbed into bed next to me. "Nothing important." "At midnight?" "You know my brother. He forgets what time zone he's in." Brandon kissed my forehead. "Go to sleep. You have a big promotion to accept tomorrow." I closed my eyes and told myself there was nothing to worry about. Brothers called each other at weird hours. It was normal, but somewhere in the back of my mind, a tiny voice whispered that something didn't feel quite right. I ignored it. I shouldn't have. The first strange thing happened 3 days after I accepted the promotion. I was making breakfast when Brandon's phone buzzed on the counter. Then it buzzed again, and again. 3 messages in a row. He grabbed it quickly, glanced at the screen, and slid it into his pocket without saying anything. "Everything okay?" I asked, flipping a pancake. "Just work stuff," he said, but his voice sounded tight. The phone buzzed 2 more times during breakfast. Each time, Brandon pulled it out, looked at it, and put it away without responding. His jaw was clenched. I'd been married to him for 8 years. I knew what his stressed face looked like. "Are you sure everything's all right?" I tried again. "Yeah, fine. Just a project getting complicated." He stood up and kissed the top of my head. "I might have to stay late tonight. Don't wait up." That week, Brandon stayed late at the office 3 times. 3 times in 5 days. He'd never done that before. His architecture firm was busy, sure, but Brandon had always been good about coming home at a normal hour. He said it was important to have balance. He said he didn't want to be one of those husbands who chose work over family. But suddenly, work was keeping him out until 8. Until 9. One night, he didn't get home until almost 10. On Thursday, I was doing laundry when I found the receipt. It was in the pocket of the jacket he'd worn on Tuesday. The paper was folded small, like someone had tried to hide it. I unfolded it and felt my stomach drop. Le Bernardin, the fancy French restaurant downtown, the one where you needed reservations weeks in advance, the one where dinner for 2 cost more than our monthly electric bill. The receipt was for 2 people, appetizers, main courses, wine, dessert, $247. Brandon and I hadn't been to Le Bernardin. I would have remembered. I stood in the laundry room holding that receipt for a long time. My brain was trying to find innocent explanations. Maybe it was old. Maybe he'd taken a client there months ago and forgotten about it. But the date on the receipt was from Tuesday, 2 days ago. The same Tuesday he'd said he had back-to-back meetings and came home at 9:30. I put the receipt in my pocket and finished folding the laundry. My hands were shaking. At dinner, I tried to sound normal. "How was your day?" "Long," Brandon said, pushing food around his plate. "That new client is demanding." "The one you had lunch with on Tuesday?" Something flickered across his face. "What?" "Your new client. I found the receipt from Le Bernardin. That must have been some lunch meeting." Brandon was quiet for a second. Then he nodded. "Right. Yeah, the guy insisted on going somewhere impressive. You know how those corporate types are." His explanation made sense. It did. But something about the way he said it felt rehearsed. That night I called Natalie. "He's cheating on you," she said immediately. "Natalie, no, don't say that." "Expensive restaurant, secret phone calls, working late? Claire, I'm a divorce lawyer. I've seen this story 100 times." He said it was a business lunch. Maybe it was. Or maybe you need to start paying attention. Natalie's voice softened. "Look, I'm not saying jump to conclusions, but trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is." After we hung up, I sat on the couch thinking, maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe the stress of the big move was making me see problems that weren't there. Brandon loved me. He'd just agreed to uproot his whole life to move to Seattle with me. That wasn't something a man planning to leave would do. I decided to stop worrying. We just needed to reconnect. On Friday, I made a plan. I'd surprise Brandon with a romantic dinner on Saturday night. Just the 2 of us. His favorite steakhouse. I even went out and bought a new dress during my lunch break. Dark blue, the color he always said looked beautiful on me. Saturday afternoon, I was getting ready when my phone rang. It was Brandon. "Hey babe, I'm so sorry, but something came up at work. Emergency meeting with a client. I have to cancel tonight." I looked at myself in the mirror. New dress, hair done, makeup perfect, candles already lit on the dining room table. "On a Saturday?" My voice came out flat. "I know, I'm really sorry. I'll make it up to you, I promise." He hung up before I could respond. I sat on our bed in my new dress and watched the sun go down through the window. The candles in the dining room burned lower and lower until they went out. And the doubt that had been quiet before started growing louder. I barely slept the night before my Seattle trip. Every time I closed my eyes, my brain made lists. things to pack, questions to ask the real estate agent, what to wear for my first day at the new office. By the time my alarm went off at 5 in the morning, I'd probably gotten 3 hours of actual sleep. Brandon was already awake when I came downstairs. He was standing in the kitchen making coffee, still in his pajama pants and an old t-shirt. He didn't turn around when I walked in. "Morning," I said. "Morning." His voice sounded distant, like his body was in the kitchen, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. I sat down at the table and watched him pour 2 mugs of coffee. He brought one over to me, then sat down across from me with his own. His phone was already on the table, face down. Before I could even take my first sip, the phone buzzed. Brandon flipped it over, looked at the screen, and his fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. Then he put it back down, face down again. "Early message," I said. "Yeah, work thing." We sat in silence. I tried to tell him about my schedule for the week, the apartment viewings I had lined up, the lunch with my new team on Wednesday. He nodded at the right times, but I could tell he wasn't really listening. The phone buzzed again. And again. Brandon picked it up each time, typed something quickly, and set it back down. His legs started bouncing under the table, that nervous habit he'd had since I first met him, the one that only showed up when something was bothering him. "Brandon, what's going on?" "Nothing. Why?" "You seem distracted." "Just have a lot on my mind." He finally looked at me. "Big meeting this week." I wanted to ask more. I wanted to know why his phone was buzzing at 5:30 in the morning. I wanted to know why he couldn't look me in the eye for more than 2 seconds. But my suitcase was packed by the door and my flight left in 3 hours. I didn't have time for a fight. The car ride to the airport was the longest 40 minutes of my life. Brandon drove. I sat in the passenger seat watching the streetlights pass by in the early morning darkness. Our neighborhood looked different at this hour. Quieter. Almost like a different place entirely. I tried to make conversation. "I'm nervous about finding the right apartment. What if everything in our price range is terrible?" "You'll find something." "Maybe you could fly out next weekend and help me look." "Maybe. I'll have to check my schedule." His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. His leg was still bouncing when it wasn't on the gas pedal. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. But I didn't know how to ask about it without sounding crazy. When we pulled up to the airport departures area, Brandon didn't even put the car in park. He just stopped at the curb and turned to kiss me. It was quick, barely more than a peck. "Have a good trip," he said. I waited for him to get out and help me with my suitcase like he always did, but he just sat there with the engine running, looking straight ahead through the windshield. "Okay then," I said quietly. I got out and pulled my suitcase from the back seat myself. Brandon drove away before I even made it through the automatic doors. I stood in the airport terminal feeling like I'd just said goodbye to a stranger. The man who dropped me off wasn't my husband. Not the real one anyway. That Brandon would have parked the car, would have walked me inside, would have kissed me properly, and told me he'd miss me. I went through security in a daze, got my coffee from the shop near my gate, sat down in the uncomfortable airport chair and stared at my boarding pass. That's when I reached into my purse for my passport. My hand searched through the main pocket. Nothing. I checked the side pocket, the zippered compartment. I dumped everything out onto the seat next to me, wallet, phone, gum, lip balm, my work badge, receipts I needed to throw away. No passport. My heart stopped. I checked again, and again. I went through every single pocket 3 times. It wasn't there. I pictured my bedroom dresser, the passport sitting right there where I'd left it last night when I was double-checking the expiration date. The announcement speaker crackled overhead. "Flight 2847 to Seattle will begin boarding in 40 minutes. 40 minutes. I looked at my pile of belongings scattered on the airport chair. I looked at my gate. I looked at my hands, which had started shaking. I couldn't get on that plane without my passport. I grabbed everything and shoved it back into my purse. My suitcase caught on every chair as I ran back through the terminal. Past the coffee shop. past the bookstore, past all the people calmly waiting for their flights like their whole world wasn't falling apart. The taxi line outside had 6 people waiting. I didn't have time for 6 people. I ran to the first cab I saw and threw open the door. I need to get home. Fast. The driver nodded and pulled away from the curb. I sat in the back seat with my heart pounding and my mind racing. Not just about the passport, about everything. Brandon's strange behavior, the constant phone messages, the way he couldn't wait to drive away from me at the airport. The doubt I'd been trying to ignore for 2 weeks suddenly felt impossible to push down anymore. The taxi pulled up to my house 23 minutes later. I handed the driver cash without waiting for change and grabbed my suitcase. My hands were still shaking, from the rush, from the panic, from everything. Brandon's car was in the driveway. I stopped walking and stared at it. He was supposed to be at work. That big, important meeting he'd mentioned at breakfast. The one that had him so distracted he could barely look at me. So why was his car sitting in our driveway? The strange feeling from earlier came back, stronger this time. Like my body knew something my brain hadn't figured out yet. I unlocked the front door as quietly as I could. I don't know why I was being quiet. This was my house. But something told me to listen first. The living room was empty. Brandon's jacket was draped over the back of a chair. His coffee mug from this morning was still sitting by the kitchen sink. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt normal. That's when I heard his voice coming from upstairs. My stomach twisted. I set my suitcase down by the door without making a sound. Each step toward the stairs felt heavier than the last. The voice got clearer as I climbed. He was in his office. The door was half open. I stopped 3 steps from the top and held my breath. I know, Brandon was saying. His voice had that urgent tone I'd never heard before. But we have to stick to the timeline. Once she's in Seattle, everything will be easier. The world tilted sideways. I grabbed the railing to keep from falling. He was talking about me. There was silence while he listened to whoever was on the other end. My heart was beating so loud I was afraid he'd hear it. My mind was spinning. What timeline? Why would things be easier once I was gone? The house is the biggest issue, Brandon said. We need to move fast before she starts asking questions. The house, our house. My vision blurred. I pressed my hand against the wall. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. I've already contacted the agent, he continued. We can have everything ready by next month. She's so focused on the new job, she won't notice until it's done. Every word felt like a knife. He was selling our house, behind my back, and he thought I was too stupid to notice because I was distracted by work. My whole body started shaking, not just my hands anymore, everything. No, she doesn't suspect anything. Brandon's voice had that satisfied tone that made me feel sick. Last night, she asked about that dinner receipt, but I handled it. The French restaurant, he'd lied right to my face. I'd wanted to believe him so badly that I'd ignored every instinct telling me something was wrong. Look, Gregory. He was talking to his brother. His own brother was helping him do this to me. I love my wife, but this has to happen. We can't keep living like this. The words crashed into me. He loved me, but he couldn't keep living like this? Living like what? Being married to me? Tears started streaming down my face. I couldn't stop them. Once she's settled in Seattle and I'm out there too, we can finally move forward, Brandon said. This long-distance thing, all these secrets, I'm tired of it. I want to be free of all this. Free. He wanted to be free. 8 years of marriage, 8 years of loving him, trusting him, building a life with him, 3 years of trying to have a baby, 3 years of crying every month when the test came back negative. And the whole time I'd been planning our future in Seattle, excited about this new chapter together, he'd been planning his escape. My legs felt weak. I slid down onto the step and sat there, tears running down my face, listening to my husband talk about being free of me. All those late nights at work, the secret phone calls, the expensive restaurant, the weird behavior this morning. It all made sense now. He was preparing to leave me. He'd probably been planning it for weeks, maybe months, and I'd been too blind to see it. I should stand up, I should walk into that office and confront him, but I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about my marriage, about the man I loved, it was all a lie. Something broke inside me. I couldn't just sit there on the stairs listening anymore. I needed to see his face. I needed to hear him say it to me directly instead of to his brother on the phone. My legs were shaking as I stood up. Every step toward his office felt impossible, but I kept moving. I pushed the door open. Brandon was sitting at his desk, laptop open, phone pressed to his ear. When he saw me standing in the doorway, all the color drained from his face. "Claire? What? You're supposed to be on a plane. Who are you talking to?" My voice came out stronger than I expected. "Tell them you'll call them back. Now." Brandon stared at me for what felt like forever. Then he spoke into the phone quietly. "Greg, I have to go. I'll call you back." He hung up and set the phone down on his desk slowly, like he was afraid any sudden movement would make things worse. "It was your brother," I said. My voice was shaking now. "I heard you. I heard everything you said." Brandon stood up quickly. "Claire, wait. Let me explain." "Explain what?" The words came pouring out of me. "That once I'm in Seattle, you can finally be free? That you're selling our house behind my back? That I've been so stupid and blind that I didn't notice you planning your escape from our marriage?" Brandon's eyes went wide. "Escape from our marriage? Claire, no, that's not—" "I heard you, Brandon." I was crying now, angry tears that I couldn't stop. "You said you can't keep living like this. You said you want to be free. How long have you been planning this? Were you ever going to tell me, or were you just going to let me move to Seattle and then serve me with divorce papers?" "Divorce papers?" Brandon looked genuinely confused. He walked around the desk toward me. "Claire, stop, please. You've got this all wrong." "Then tell me what I got wrong," I shouted. "Tell me why you're selling our house. Tell me what you want to be free from." Brandon ran his hand through his hair. He looked stressed and cornered and nothing like the man who'd kissed me goodbye at the airport an hour ago. "I was going to surprise you," he said quietly. "This wasn't how you were supposed to find out." "Find out what?" Brandon took a deep breath. "I'm selling the house because we don't need it anymore. We're both moving to Seattle." My crying slowed. "What?" "That call with Gregory. He's a real estate agent in Seattle now, remember? I've been working with him to sell this place and find us something out there. Something bigger. With a yard. In a good school district." My mind was spinning. Nothing made sense. "But you said once I'm in Seattle, you said you want to be free." "Free from the stress of long distance," Brandon interrupted. "Claire, I got a job offer in Seattle 3 weeks ago. That's what all the calls have been about. I've been trying to coordinate everything. Selling the house, the new job, the move. I wanted to surprise you. I didn't want you to feel guilty or think you had to turn down your promotion because of me." I stared at him. My brain was trying to catch up with what he was saying. "You're moving to Seattle?" I whispered. "With me?" "Of course with me. Where else would I go?" Relief started flooding through me like warm water. He wasn't leaving me. He was coming with me. All of this was just a surprise that had gone terribly wrong. But then I remembered something else. Something that still didn't make sense. "Wait," I said. "What about that restaurant receipt? The one from Le Bernardin? You said it was a work lunch." Brandon's face changed when I mentioned the receipt. The relief that had been there a second ago disappeared. He looked down at the floor. A different kind of nervousness crossed his expression. "The restaurant," he said quietly. "That's the other thing I've been hiding." My stomach dropped again. "What other thing?" Brandon walked back to his desk and picked up a folder that had been sitting under his laptop. His hands were shaking as he held it out to me. I took it slowly, afraid of what I might find inside. I opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were pamphlets and documents: Seattle Fertility Center, treatment options, success rates, doctor consultations. I looked up at Brandon. "What is this?" "I've been meeting with specialists," he said softly. "For the past month. That dinner at the French restaurant, it wasn't a work lunch. It was with Dr. Patterson. She's one of the top fertility doctors in the country. She was in town for a conference, and I wanted to talk to her about our options before you moved." My throat tightened. I couldn't speak. "We've been trying for 3 years, Claire." Brandon's voice cracked. "I know how much it's hurt you. I know how many times you've cried when another test came back negative. I see you pretending you're okay when you're not. I didn't want to get your hopes up until I knew there was a real chance." I looked down at the papers in my hands. Appointment schedules, doctor recommendations, research studies. This wasn't something he'd thrown together last minute. He'd been working on this for weeks. "Dr. Patterson thinks she can help us," Brandon continued. "She has a clinic in Seattle. I've already made us an appointment for next month after you're settled in the new job." The tears came again, but different tears this time. Not angry ones, not scared ones. "That's what you meant on the phone?" I whispered. "When you said, 'she doesn't need to know'?" Brandon nodded. "I wanted it to be a surprise. The job, the house, the fertility specialist, all of it. I wanted to show up in Seattle and give you this whole new life. A fresh start for both of us. A real chance at the family we've always wanted." His eyes were wet too. I'd only seen Brandon cry twice in 8 years. Once at our wedding. Once when we got the news that there might be problems with us having children. "But I messed it up," he said. "I was so focused on keeping the secret that I made you doubt us. I made you doubt me. Claire, I'm so sorry." I dropped the folder on his desk and crossed the room. I wrapped my arms around his neck and held on as tight as I could. "I thought I was losing you," I whispered into his shoulder. "I thought everything was falling apart." "Never," Brandon whispered back, his arms tight around me. "You're never losing me. We're in this together. Everything I do is for us." We stood there holding each other for a long time. I could feel his heartbeat against my chest, steady and strong. The same heartbeat I'd fallen asleep listening to for 8 years. Finally, I pulled back and laughed through my tears. "I forgot my passport. That's the only reason I came home." Brandon laughed too, wiping his eyes. Best forgotten passport ever. I picked up the fertility clinic folder again. This time when I looked at it, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. "We're really doing this?" I asked. "Moving to Seattle together? Starting over?" "Together," Brandon said firmly. "I already put in my notice at work. Gregory has buyers interested in the house. We can be out there within 6 weeks." 6 weeks. A new city, new jobs, new chances. Maybe even the baby we'd been dreaming about. "Even if the fertility stuff takes time," Brandon said gently, "we'll have each other. That's what matters most." I nodded. He was right. We'd gotten so caught up in trying to have a baby that we'd forgotten to just be us. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a notification that my flight was boarding soon. "You need to get back to the airport," Brandon said, checking his watch. "If we hurry, you might still make it." But I was looking at him differently now, really seeing him for the first time in weeks. Not the stranger I'd built in my mind, but my husband, my partner, the man who'd been working in secret not to hurt me, but to give me hope. "Or," I said slowly, "I could book a flight for tomorrow, and we could spend today actually talking to each other. No more secrets, no more surprises, just us being honest about everything." Brandon smiled. That real smile I'd been missing. "I'd like that." I called the airline and rescheduled my flight. They charged me a change fee, but I didn't care. Some things were worth more than money. We spent the afternoon on the couch with my laptop open between us. Brandon showed me the houses Gregory had found in Seattle. I showed him my notes about the new job. We talked about the fertility treatments, what they would involve, what our chances were, what we'd do if they didn't work. We talked about things we should have talked about months ago instead of both keeping our fears to ourselves. That evening, we made dinner together in our kitchen. The kitchen that would soon belong to someone else. Brandon chopped vegetables while I stirred pasta sauce. We moved around each other the way we had 1,000 times before. Comfortable. Easy. Like two people who belonged together. "I'm sorry I doubted you," I said quietly. "I'm sorry I made you doubt," Brandon answered. As we sat down to eat, I looked around our dining room, the table where we'd had our first dinner as homeowners, the window where we'd watched snow fall last winter, the life we'd built here. It was time to let it go, time to build something new, and this time, we'd build it together, honestly, without secrets. I realized something as I watched Brandon across the table, talking excitedly about our future. The passport I'd forgotten wasn't a mistake at all. It was exactly what we needed. A chance to stop running in different directions and remember we were supposed to be running together. Sometimes the things that feel like disasters are actually blessings in disguise. Sometimes forgetting something important leads you to find something even more important. Sometimes coming home is exactly where you're supposed to be.